Welcome to YouBook channel. Read and listen to the greatest stories that mankind has ever told. From Iliad to Covid Terror, and other famous classics. Enjoy the best world literatures throughout history.
Covid Terror. Copyright 2021 by Gerry de Cadiz. All rights reserved. A unified Al-Qaeda and Islamic State took advantage of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic in reinvigorating its jihadist cause for dominance and the re-establishment of a caliphate. Holy Bible, Book of Revelation chapter 6 verse 8. I looked, and behold, an ashen horse, and he who sat on it had the name Death, and Hades was following with him. Authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth, to kill with sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, and by the wild beasts of the earth.
Covid Terror. Chapter 25.
Zulfikar Resort, Los Angeles, California. May 11, 2020. George Washington, the greatest American political leader, military general, statesman, and founding father, who served as the first president of the United States, enunciated how democracy should put into top consideration the avoidance of war which only destroys a nation. But he also said, "Let us therefore animate and encourage each other, and show the whole world that a freeman, contending for liberty on his own ground, is superior to any slavish mercenary on earth." This statement is more relevant in our present time. Captain Kristen Haver reversed course with her AH-64 Apache attack helicopter, and saw in her aft a massive explosion. One bird down. She heard her wingman shouted with glee, as the second Black Hawk got victimized with another Sidewinder. "It's Palestine again," Kristen replied, remembering their first actual air combat in the Gaza Strip. Back then, Benjamin Netanyahu's government flexed its muscles with determination, because of the incessant suicide bombings and rocket attacks against Jewish communities in the Palestinian territory. The jihadists were able to procure air assets from Syria, and were boasting of its capabilities, harassing and bullying the Jews. The Israeli Air Force agreed with the Pentagon to allow some Apache hotshots to taste the desert air from above. The third Al-Qaeda ISIS gunship schemed over another bivouac of SWB combatants at the eastern wall of the resort. The pilot saw that this unit threatens the areas where Ghurfat al-Arb is located. The Khalifa had made a strong directive to protect at all costs this building. "Clear the ground, soldiers!" A captain shouted at his company to take cover. A Black Hawk got lower and aimed the GAU-19A at his unit, in a classic air-to-ground attack. The gunship commenced strafing at the soldiers, who were caught among the war materiel being readied for the push against the Al-Qaeda ISIS headquarters. The weapon is an electrically driven, 3-barrel rotary heavy machine gun that fires the .50 BMG. "Man pads!" the officer ordered for an air defense. Several troopers were hit, some were fatal, before a corporal pulled the trigger of the man-portable air defense system, and a FIM-92 Stinger flew towards the Black Hawk, which immediately changed direction trying to escape the SAM. It was too late, as there's not enough room to maneuver. The pilot turned to his right, as another anti-missile warning filled his cockpit. In a split second, he failed to look forward with the main rotor hitting one of the tall, decorative palm trees of the resort. The gunship bumped its cockpit at the tree, as the two Stingers converged, making a very spectacular burst of fire. On the ground, Lieutenant Colonel Siegfried Clark tried to organize a coherent assault strategy. Based on military intelligence from spy satellites, the Zulfikar Resort houses about an overstrength company of jihadists, numbering about 250 battle-hardened veterans and fighters. In the past weeks, groups of mujahideen converged on the LA compound, staying at its cavernous bunkers and avoiding exposures above ground. The fighters, remnants of Saddam Hussein's Special Republican Guard, were disguised as workers of the Salt Wells Villa, and got the time to train during the night. Colonel Clark talked at the open channel of his network, and demanded an aggressive act from his soldiers. The murderer of General Friedrich Clark is holed up in this compound, with a finger poised to a trigger that can unleash a nuclear holocaust in Hoover Dam, and kill also millions of Americans from thirst, because of ricin and COVID-19 contamination of the West Coast's drinking water. Soldiers, you are not new to this shit. We did it together in many foreign lands. I hope that you'll exert more sweats in our own land. Amir, the 1st and 3rd platoons of the Nebuchadnezzar, are pinned in the southern sector. Abdul Najib reported the situation. The Nebuchadnezzar Rifle Company comprises of 5 platoons, assigned to the north-south sectors with 2 units each, while the last platoon guards the central sector, where the command center is located. We've been through this storm before. With Allah's guidance, we will prevail. Aaron al-Hassani was confident that even if the Caliphate army is outnumbered, the Mujahideen are all motivated in this fight. Besides, they have the kind of weapons that can match those being used by the Americans. This is just a continuation of the Battle of Bagh-Husfakani. But in this case, we will not give any quarter. The Khalifa made it clear to all his warriors, before they were deployed to the battle stations after their dawn prayer. Of course, we hold the ace, referring to the weapons of mass destruction at his disposal. Within 5 minutes, the entire complex became a scene of high-pitched and close-quarter combats. The two forces collided in a battle of attrition. The fight is even, with the Caliphate army finding confidence that they can match the tactics of the Americans. Their experiences in a series of ISIS offensives in the Middle East since 2014 gave them invaluable insights how the US forces fought, and what weapons they usually used. Amir, the northern sector is being pushed back. I will detach 2 squads from the central sector to reinforce them. Amir al-Quraishi called the war room in his tactical radio. Being one of the most experienced in the Caliphate army, he is the Khalifa's intelligence officer, and further designated as ground commander of the defenders. In fact, the Khalifa entrusted to him the leadership of the ISIS combatants in the Middle East, when Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was assassinated by the US Special Forces, last October 20, 19 in Berisha, Syria. Carry on, Commander. Make the infidels pay. Aaron confirmed. Is there a way out of this? Amira Siddiqui is more practical than religious in her approach to the situation and the immediate outcomes. She was sitting in front of Aaron in the war room. Although a scientist by training, but she cannot appreciate the very technical equipment that Aaron's officers are using. Having been bred in a Muslim family in Pakistan, where street violence is just commonplace, she still prefers the good old ways of fighting. 15 minutes ago, she did her first affirmation of being a true-blooded jihadist. She wanted to visit the armory where the Filipina scientist was detained, but along the way, they were ambushed by a squad of enemies. It came into a heated exchange of fire, with 10 mujahideen making the ultimate sacrifice to save Lady Al-Qaeda. Finally, the black-cladded men overpowered the staunch defense of the US forces, when the latter got out of ammunition, and cannot extract from their position. 3 were captured in the encounter, and were brought back to the command center. Amira asked them to convert, but they refused. One by one, she beheaded them with an executioner's sword she found at the Khalifa's office. It was many years ago, the last time she holds in anger a blade weapon. 2 thugs tried to rob their house in Pakistan. No one was around, except her and a young nephew. The robbers threatened to kill them, but in a surge of adrenaline, she took his father's Lakalata sword, and applied what she learned in fencing in elementary school. A billionaire like me, always have a lot of options. Aaron replied with a strong hold of her hand. In this battle, our gallant fighters cannot go out from here alive. But we can, he assured her. His bargaining chips are the active W-80 bombs in Hoover Dam, and the RCX among the water treatment facilities. After threatening Egypt to be isolated, the United Nations delivered to him a manifesto supporting an endorsement of creating a caliphate state in the Sinai Peninsula. A full resolution cannot be enacted, with the absence of so many nation representatives because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But the US government procrastinated in releasing from jails the Al-Qaeda ISIS top commanders. As a demonstration that he's serious of the demands, he made the Alfred Merritt Smith water treatment facility be an example. With remote video coverage, the 25 cylindrical objects within the water processing tanks exploded with a colorless liquid inside. An hour later, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention notified the American public to immediately close their taps and avoid using the waters from the bomb treatment facility until further notice. Several cities and rural communities that depended on the contaminated processing plant bombarded the White House for emergency rations of water. Martial law has to be declared in the states of California, Nevada, and Arizona. This is to enable the federal and local governments to exert control over the deteriorating situations because of the Al-Qaeda ISIS invasion in America. The CDC scientists confirmed that the sample from the AMS water treatment facility was contaminated with the deadly ricin poison, with a high dosage of the hybrid COVID-19 virus. General, the USSF Special Warfare Battalion, is on the verge of enveloping the central area of the resort, which we believed contains the command center of Aaron al-Hassani. Lieutenant Colonel Siegfried Clark directly reported to General Alexander Leahy, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I want you to reconnoiter first the avenue of assault, and ensure that the equipment controlling those weapons in Nevada will not be triggered accidentally. The general has been criticized harshly by the president of his failure to prevent the bioweapons in the AMS water treatment facility from exploding. Com Delta to Moon Splitters. Sitrep. Colonel Clark ordered his company commanders to report their total strength, and the inventory of armor and specialized weapons, to determine their capability to make the final push. The Special Warfare Battalion is down to 80% manpower deficient, with several soldiers killed in action or wounded in battle. 2 APCs and another pair of tactical vehicles were damaged, while one of the Apache gunships was hit in the tail, and had to fall back to avoid further damage. Com Delta. It's New Year in LA. Captain Kristen Haver flicked his outside communication to Colonel Clark, as a gun emplacement exploded with a disintegrating fire and a shower of sand. Another hellfire obliterated the other bunker, which initially stopped the momentum of attack by SWB units. The cottages surrounding the main building in the central area served as a defensive belt protecting the command center. One by one, these were targeted by mortars and shells from a team of infantry fighting vehicles. Tango Yankee, Stargazer. The rifle companies did their part in constantly putting the pressure on the Caliphate army, until such time that all structures in the central sector were captured, except the building that military intelligence tagged as the command center. Moon Splitters, be advised that the Guru is in that building. Colonel Clark reminded his officers to be careful not to damage the instruments, which controls the weapons in Hoover Dam. Suddenly, an armored vehicle followed by half a dozen pickup trucks, full of black-cladded fighters with high-caliber weapons, exited at the back of the building. The convoy dashed towards the southern sector, where the fighting is in a stalemate. Com Delta. Bandits on the run, south. I will try some darts. Captain Haver loosened a pair of the Israeli-made Spike missiles towards the convoy. The anti-tank guided missile and anti-personnel missile, with a tandem charge heat warhead, was enough to scorch the 6 trucks and its riders. Only the armored vehicle continued to an underground bunker, escaping a hellfire from the gunship above. Even without shouting Banzai, the 2 SWB companies which charged inside the command center with blazing guns, resembled to some Japanese videos of World War II. But veterans from Iraq would say later, that they missed the same rush they did, in the man-to-man close-quarter combats in the War on Terror. No one should stop by the bar. The whiskey's out of stock today, a sergeant taking the point of his squad, bawled at the very eager troopers. The command center was designed as a rest house. It has several expensive suites, and rooms for various functions, decorated and placed with modern and imported furniture and high-quality appliances. A captain informed the ground commander. "Colonel, the palace is cold. The harem's been cleared." The Khalifa shifted his command post to the southern sector bunker. The command center was evacuated, probably to avoid damages to the facility. As they opened a door to a large room, a sudden explosion ensued. 3 soldiers were maimed, the firsts who entered, and took the full blast of the explosive booby trap. When the smoke cleared, they saw that the entire war room sustained serious damage, especially its instruments. "General, here is a copy of the NMCC." In a real streaming video fed, Colonel Clark reported to Pentagon the setup of the Khalifa's war room, highlighting the fact that it resembles to the Department of Defense's National Military Command Center in the Pentagon. It was here yesterday, when Aaron al-Hassani broadcasted his ultimatum to the United Nations. The room was installed with all the technologies that a modern-day military commander will need to establish an effective and efficient command, control, communications, computers, cyber defense, and combat systems and intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. They could even attack the permanent members of the UN Security Council, all at once, the colonel further illustrated. The jihadists had invested a lot to acquire an advanced combat direction system, a mission control monitor and a tactical digital map system. These instruments can be manipulated by cloud computing, so anyone can direct a military operation anywhere in the world, by just using a smart mobile phone. General, be advised that the functionality of this command center may now be remotely controlled by Aaron al-Hassani, wherever he is. After ensuring that the remaining rooms of the command center were cleared of Al-Qaeda ISIS fighters, the SWB troopers moved out to join their comrades in the southern sector. Colonel Clark stayed behind to check for anything that can be useful. A closer look revealed that the blast did not damage the network cables behind the computer tables and metal cabinets. A silver, tubular satellite receiver remained intact. There's a chance that USSF cyber warriors can utilize these communication peripherals to connect to a server, in hooking up with a reported satellite of the Caliphate army. They could even link up with the advanced combat direction system that the Khalifa uses to remotely control the satellite and the weapons. Siegfried was about to pick up a blasted computer system unit when somebody hugged him strongly from behind and twisted his arm, sending the APC-9K to the floor. With all his strength, he back-kicked the attacker's knee, which allowed him to free from the bear hug. He turned around and stepped back. The assailant is a big man with an oriental facial feature. He recognized him through a CIA dossier. Yusuf smiled as he also recognized this man. Training in Spetsnaz includes profiling of enemies. Heaving a sigh of relief, the anticipated confrontation with the son of one of his prominent victims will come to an end. Colonel Clark, it was all business. I don't even know his name. He took out a Korshun, the favorite fighting knife of the Russian special forces. Siegfried imagined the gutted torso of his father. This is the assassin who murdered a patriarch of the Clark genealogy. But he has to be careful. This is a highly trained mercenary, intelligent, skilled, and dangerous. Time to keep a promise, Dad. He whispered, as he took out the Rambo knife that General Friedrich Clark gave him, as a gift in his latest promotion. The colonel escaped Yusuf's sudden swing of his blade to the side. According to CIA record, the Chinese is a master of the knife, adopting the common Spetsnaz stance, but most of the time, the old Chinese exotic moves. Siegfried was taught by his father in the Marine's knife fighting stance, which is tight and succinct.
Keep that knife at shoulder width, from neck level down to the belt level. That would avoid the enemy in anticipating your attack. Then Army Rangers Colonel Friedrich Clark tapped with his stick the hands of a young lieutenant of the U.S. Air Force Special Operations Forces. The Clark mansion in Shenandoah Valley was cheerful during weekends, his mom being a certified cook in exclusive restaurants in Virginia. The two men of uniforms would always keep open their schedules for a family get-together. His sister oftentimes invited her classmates for picnics in the valley, one of which became his girlfriend, before his assignment to the West Coast. Your weapon should always be pointed at the opponent at all times. For defense, the offhand must be held vertically, to protect your ribs, head, and neck.
Yusuf take another lunge, and a step to the side to avoid Siegfried's counterattack. A powerful kick to the abdomen sent the latter sprawling to the floor. The Chinese thought to finish the dazed American with a flying kick at his head. But just in time, the colonel rolled sideways and flipped up to go back to his fighting stance. Siegfried barely able to parry the blade attacks. The assassin is strong, powerful, and relentless. He keeps on attacking like a mad dog, sending Siegfried to the floor several times. The colonel keeps on moving at 45-degree angles to either side to avoid getting sliced. In one lucky moment, he was able to land a strong, deep slash to the face of the Chinese. Yusuf howled in pain, as he charged like an agitated bloodied bull. Siegfried stepped aside and made a quick about-face, followed with a wide arc swing of his knife-wielding hand, to the right neck of his opponent. Blood spouted from the neck of Yusuf like a fountain, yet he's still alive. The Spetsnaz tried to get up to take the offensive, but a strong axe kick to the head put the big man trashing back to a kneeling position. He lost his strength, and he slackened the grip to his knife, sending it clattering to the floor. Siegfried picked up the Korshun in his other hand, and in one quick motion, thrust the blade to the heart of the assassin. He stepped to the back of the kneeling man. Reaching out to hold tightly at the Spetsnaz knife as a left-hand support, he gripped his Rambo knife with the right hand, and slowly slit the throat until the blade came through. Yusuf never made any sound. Colonel Siegfried Clark killed the assassin sent by the Khalifa, in a manner that his father was murdered. The bastard paid the price, Dad. The SWB commander swore, as he carefully sheathed his heirloom knife, and took the other as a souvenir of war. The Battle of Zulfikar Resort was still raging, when Sage rappelled from a MH6M Little Bird, as part of a stick of 75th Ranger Regiment team. In their approach, pockets of strong resistance can be discerned along the coast, and among barricaded buildings. A quick shootout sporadically flared up, in the isolated cottages within the compound. Tango, Eagle. Sage shouted at his Falcon 3 tactical radio, showing appreciation to the pilot for the ride. As the rest of the regimental reconnaissance company troopers took positions, he made a run to a nearest shack for cover. He opened an app in his smartphone, and hooked up with the wideband tactical communications network of the U.S. Army. The app displayed an option for him to send and receive voice, video, and data for situational awareness and for intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance. Agent Merckx was able to map out the probable location of Dr. Guinevere del Pilar, based on tactical reports of the ongoing combat, regarding the positions of enemy units, and the different facilities where hostilities happened. A secluded cottage on a poolside is constantly being subjected to assault by the U.S. forces. Apparently, it is heavily defended. Merckx to Com Delta. Request intel on poolside Quonset. Sage called the ground commander of the assaulting force, from the Special Warfare Battalion of the U.S. Space Force. Merckx, Quonset is Armory and possible Alcatraz. Colonel Siegfried Clark responded, indicating that the cottage is a repository of weapons and ammunitions of the Caliphate Army. It may also hold prisoners. As Sage headed to the direction of the Quonset, the counter-attack of the defenders was exhausted. Unslinging the Heckler & Koch MP5 loaned to him by the Rangers, he approached a temporary bivouac of the assaulting units, where Colonel Clark was directing the avenue of assault. Asked Ryans, Agent Merckx wants to join the party. The Space Warrior point at the gun-toting civilian. They simply nod their heads, and focused on corralling the defenders. A loud reverberating bang means, somebody got lucky enough to dislodge the heavy door. The Ast Ryans, recently having been trained and modeled as a special forces unit, were able to penetrate the barricade surrounding the hut, and made a dash to the main entrance of the cottage. Sage joined the fray. He's getting back into his old system, the Ranger in a room-to-room flushing of ISIS in Iraq. Unlike the long engagement outside which took too long, the interior house cleaning was very quick though bloody, as the cottage offers little cover inside. He shot the arms of a mujahid, who makes heavy going in the corner. As the fighter writhed in pain, Sage growled at him, Ain al-Sijin. The man pointed at a locked room, where the prisoner was kept previously under heavy guard. The CIA agent took the AK-47, and tied the arms of the ISIS warrior with cloth to stop the bleeding. As he opened the door, Gwen was cowering in a corner. Upon seeing him, she jumped at her feet and hugged him so tight. I thought he would kill me. She's trembling in fear. He won't. Aaron wanted me to get you here. He hold her close and stroke her hair. When you were telling me that you're in his chopper, I was about to tell you, that he's the Khalifa, and the one behind all the mishaps you've been through. When he came here last night, he said that I'm gonna be wearing that jacket, on my way out of here. She pointed at a black apparel under the table. That's a suicide vest, with a live and ready to charge improvised explosive device. He suddenly asked her, how do you fight? I can handle myself with taekwondo, although mostly in sports. But I can do some kicks that can rattle your ribs. Looking around the armory, no firearm is available. Sage recognized the remaining weapon. The Mujahideen thought that this is just a ceremonial blade. Sage lifted the sword of Islam from its rack. The weapon has a double-edged straight blade, and with a hilt of solid gold friezes and arabesque decorations. As Gwen looked at him with incredulity, he explained. This is a real sword. The former Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini used it, to decapitate his enemies in World War II. And it seems that the Khalifa was able to bribe the progenies of the Italian resistance to get this artifact. She took the blade, and did some Balintawak eskrima methods. I do have a black belt in Arnis in a Le Combinai Sampuo level. No matter if you can do some jetly stunts, you still need this. Sage gave her the weapon of her captor, instructing her the basic of arming, and shooting the Avtomat Kalashnikova AK-47 assault rifle. The Ghurfat Alarb is where the action will be, Sage surmised. But when they arrive at the place, it was empty. The staccato of shooting from automatic firearms, and series of explosions on the cottages at the southern sector of the resort, means that everybody is in that area. You just stay here. I will find a transport to get us out of this hell. Sage ushered her in an anteroom. Thrusting the AK-47 at her, you push the selector to the lower position, and that's when you can start firing, in a semi-automatic mode, pull and shot. When he left, Gwen found a cabinet and positioned herself behind it. Not in her wildest dream that she will be in this kind of situation, holding an assault rifle, and guarding herself from anyone who would come in that door. So much for a geneticist. She almost laughed, imagining herself like a fanatic lady terrorist on a march for religious freedom. Gwen's interest in the Filipino martial arts, Arnis, was inspired with a desire not to be bullied in school. Of medium physique and skinny in her teens, she oftentimes became the receiving end of jokes, and getting pushed in the crowd. Everything changed, when she was able to make a good strike using her long umbrella. Even the big boys started to put some distance from her. Her attention was brought to the present, when she heard footsteps getting nearer. Peering through the side of the cabinet, she saw two fully armed black-cladded men, ostensibly looking for something. Shawar, the emir said that he placed it in a cabinet. The taller one pointed to a cabinet next to where she is hiding. The duo walked over, and she heard the scratches of plastic object being taken out from its repository. When they came into view, it's a standard-size green attaché case. When they're about to go out, the man named Shawar got an afterthought. Mohammed, there's also another, sort of an insurance. Really? I am sure, as he started to walk towards the hiding place of the scientist. She gripped at her weapon. Obviously, she will be killed if they discover her. Slowly, so as not to create any noise, she thumbed the selector, pushing it only to the middle. When the terrorists were about 5 meters from her, she sprung in her position and pulled the trigger. Shawar and Mohammed were surprised. They tried to take cover, but there's nothing that could shield them from the blazing gun. The AK-47 continues to fire automatically, cycling fresh rounds in its chamber until the magazine was emptied. She dropped the weapon. When the noise subsided and the smoke cleared, the two men were dead. The attaché case was thrown near her feet. She can hear running footsteps. Gwen tried to go back to her hiding place, but it's too late. Dr. Del Pilar, you seem to be lost. A nasty scoff was etched in the face of Dr. Amira Siddiqui. The Pakistani scientist raised her executioner's sword in a mock salute. You're an evil bitch. Gwen's hatred increased a notch, when she saw the person who stole her virus X6E, the nickname of Amira when she was in China, isolated the H-CoV-229E subspecie into a biogerm agent, and propagated it, to infect a pangolin at Huanan seafood wholesale market in mid-November of 2019. The rest is history, starting with patient 0 of the COVID-19 pandemic. Doc Gwen, you're just too naive to recognize the importance of what you unearthed in the Black Death graveyard, and what was given to you by the Sienese padre. Amira laughed aloud as she inched closer, the sword with its glistening blade poised to strike. Gwen thought of the best stances in swordplay. I'm not a conniving thief like you. Amira took a sudden strike, hoping to draw the first blood. Gwen stepped to the side, and leveled the sword of Islam to parry the blow. The next strong lunge of the Pakistani was meant to inflict wound to her opponent's solar plexus, that can cause fatal damage to the vital organs in the abdomen. But the Filipino was able to skip backwards, and counter with a powerful diagonal forehand slashing swing, that deflected Amira's weapon. Gwen's feint for a left chest stab was unexpected, which caused Amira to be off-balanced, giving the former an opportunity to perform a mighty taekwondo turn sidekick, which hit the latter in the kidney. The potent energy and excruciating pain forcefully sprawled the Pakistani to the side, her head hitting a sharp table edge. As blood oozed from her brow, Amira became animated, charging wildly with strikes, lunges and stabs. The ability of an Arnis black belter was superbly exhibited by the Filipina fighter with attacks, thrusts, stabs, pokes and strikes. Amira tried to run her through, in the kamikaze style of katana attack of a samurai. But at the most critical moment, Gwen did a somersault and landed in a Hasso no Kami stance. As Amira turned to face and attack her again, the Filipina scientist immediately raised the sword of Islam above her head, with the blade sloping slightly to the rear and, exerting all her force, did a powerful cutting motion to the neck of the Pakistani. The very sharp blade hit fatally and went through. That's for the millions of victims of the COVID-19 virus, you unleashed to the world. Dr. Guinevere Del Pilar whispered, as she wiped the blood off her blade. This is your test in cyber defense. Lieutenant Colonel Siegfried Clark told a team of cyber warriors, who were busy checking and testing the network cables and modems in Khalifa's war room. The technicians were part of the 527th Space Aggressor Squadron, who made the barn at Schriever Air Force Base their home. One of their main tasks, is to replicate live GPS and satellite communication electronic attacks, for training service members across the world. I'm excited. This time, it is for real. A blondie officer in her early 20s commented. Perfectly correct, Lieutenant. Colonel Clark insisted to check first, how these young officers will do their craft. They were so shocked at seeing him in blood-drenched uniform. They nod their heads in unison, when he told them that gruesome fighting with an avatar in your monitor, may be a little different in real-life fighting with bronze and brows. Sir, here's a live connection. I think I can pick up a little signal to start with. One of the silent type nerdy perked up, as he opened a command prompt and typed ping minsat. Pinging is testing the reachability on the Internet Protocol network of Minsat, the satellite that according to CIA, the Khalifa possess and is being used for command, control, and communication of his army. The ping also measures the round-trip time, for messages sent from the originating host to a destination computer. The SAS officer's request timed out, so he tried checking in first to a black hole DNS server, that was specifically created by the USSF for this purpose. It's like getting the key to a locked door, from under the doormat scheme. The next time he pinged, the monitor spewed a series of command parameters, as an active response from Minsat's control server in outer space. Another cyber warrior opened his laptop, and linked with the second one. The duo worked in tandem, their fingers flying all across the keyboards. There were times that they have to pause for a while, for some source codes to be downloaded, then rehash the program, compile and upload them again to the server. The blondie's task is to open the exclusive USSF domain, and counter-checked what the two members were doing. The fourth member is a skinny, tall lad in thick glasses. He stayed apart from the three, and stooped his head near the monitor. From time to time, he would call out a command, and the other two would test the network in a flurry of taps on the keyboard. All of a sudden, the four young lieutenants stopped at once, like automatons in an auto CAD manufacturing line. The skinny team leader stood up and offered Siegfried his laptop. Colonel, Minsat is yours. Amir, somebody remotely accessed Minsat's dedicated network. Ayman Kalimov opened his laptop, and pointed to Aaron Al-Hassani, an Internet Protocol address, that hooked up with the satellite server. It's not surprising. The enemy will really find ways to destroy us. Khalifa still maintained his composure, despite losing much of his command. The commander of cybersecurity simply reset, then changed the access code of Minsat, and the remote interloper was cut off from the network. The last report of Louise informed him that no one survived in the Vero Beach property except her. Another bad news is that all the flights she rebooked were cancelled by the different airlines, without giving any explanation. Nearer to him, the established protocol among his commanders, to make a regular report on an agreed pattern, was broken. Nobody from Hoover Dam could be raised. The commanders and the entire 135 mujahideen, of the Medina Rifle Company he deployed to Lake Mead, were martyred. The last form of communication they got, was from the phone of Commander Abu Ayman al-Iraqi, probably hidden and left opened. His grunts were the result of very strong blows from hard objects to his body. Although his prayer of martyrdom is clearly audible. Here in Zulfikar Resort, the Nebuchadnezzar Rifle Company was decimated also. All officers and veteran warriors fell on their positions, and never gave up the fight. All his offensive weapons, used by the Hammurabi Combat Support Company, were destroyed, including the 3 Black Hawks, which did well in the opening phase of the battle. The brave pilots of the Al-Sakra al-Haswad flight, were definitely lounging now in paradise. The operators in the Al-Dafi al-Ja'u squad, did a very commendable job in limiting the flights of enemy gunships, disabling at least one Apache attack helicopter. This courageous acts under fire, enabled the Caliphate army to maneuver with restricted air interdiction. Squads from his Batariat al-Madfiya, inflicted so much damages, to the armored carriers and fighting vehicles of the enemy. Even the simple rocket-propelled grenades were very useful against a mass formation of troops. The case of the Baghdad Special Operations Unit was more complicated. The UN task group succeeded in its assignment of planting the RCX bioweapon to the centralized air conditioning unit of the United Nations headquarters, despite Abu Muhammad al-Shimali and Fatih Ahmejadi getting killed at JFK International Airport, and Qasim Abbas being detained by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. For his previous wet projects and in charge of internal security, only Louise Luthwaite survived. The CCTVs at Ghurfat al-Arb clearly showed how Lieutenant Colonel Siegfried Clark beheaded Yusuf ibn Faid, in the traditional and standard method of execution, in pre-modern Islamic law. Under the Research and Development Unit, the Iraqi scientist Nazim al-Afari died in an explosive accident, when he did not put his attention to what he was doing in the laboratory. Dr. Amira Siddiqui set everything in motion with the sale of Virus X, a viral strain discovered by the Filipina geneticist, but was stolen by the Pakistani from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. She refined and upgraded the level of pathogenicity and transmissibility of the hybrid virus that became the COVID-19 pandemic. The spy cameras recorded the spectacular duel she had with the inventor of the Sinovac coronavirus vaccine. Only a squad of the Iraqi Golden Division remained, doggedly guarding the Khalifa in the last bunker, and ready to sacrifice themselves when the situation calls for it. I assure you, the act of Shaheed of our brothers and sisters won't be wasted. Aaron talked to the remaining commanders that he has, Abdul Najib and Ayman Kalimov. The Khalifa reached out to the laptop installed with the C6ISR program, and opened the Advanced Combat Direction System. Without fanfare, he tapped the image of Hoover Dam with the green blinking outline. For a while, the screen went blank. The next image was that of a fast-scrolling series of programming commands, in black and white codes, and a countdown of 15 minutes. Is that necessary? The second-in-command of the Caliphate army, Abdul Najib, questioned the decision of the Aaron al-Hassani to activate the trigger of the W-80 thermonuclear bomb. No one should ever dare question any of my decision. The Khalifa replied, shooting with a Walther PP, the head of his operations officer. Commander Abdul Najib is known also as the Emir of the Philippines, and the heroic commander of ISIS, in the Battle of Maraywai and Battle of Baghuz Fawqani. Amir al-Quraishi, the intelligence officer of the Caliphate army, suddenly went inside when he heard the sound of the pistol. You've lost your mind. He confronted Aaron, upon seeing the lifeless body of his friend and fellow ISIS, Abdul. 2 shots from the Walther pistol immobilized, and killed the last commander of the Ghurfat al-Arb squad. Ayman Kalimov did not wait. He took out his service pistol, but he was too slow. Aaron simply shifted his hand and shoot twice the head of his communications officer. Killing his commanders was a dead end for the Khalifa. They've been dear to him as companions and warriors. But this present military debacle only showed that they've outlasted their usefulness. He lost everything that he invested. So, there is only one thing left for him to do. Go where he can be safe, and hide again in another personality. Aaron was about to leave, when he heard the fire of automatic weapons. He peered by the door, and saw that the entire squad of the Golden Division were dead. Aaron just turned his back to flee, when the door was kicked open. And standing right there with a submachine gun trained at his chest, is the man whom he had been hunting. The man named Jibrail ibn Ali, finally confronted Aaron al-Hassani in the most unlikely moment. I don't presume you'll shoot me with that weapon of infidels. Aaron was hoping against odds that this man is reasonable enough. Of course not. I don't want to make a martyr out of you. Jibrail motioned Aaron to sit, which the latter obliged. You are public enemy number 1 in America. But in the Middle East, among displaced populations, you become a symbol of hope. Millions of jihadists are presently praying for that bomb to do its job. Jibrail pointed at the countdown in Kalimov's opened laptop. "It seems that you agree to what I did." Aaron noticed that the newcomer looked at a point behind him. "No. It's not just the issue of political dominance that your group wanted to insist. In mainstream philosophy and the social trends of today, your actions were just appealing to a sector, who saw that terror, arrogance, and power, were good ingredients to make us go back to the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Why don't you just say, that what the caliphate army have been doing, were similar to what happened before, when infidels need to be forced to accept the faith?" Aaron does not want to prolong this discussion. At the moment, he has no time for this. Whatever it is that you want to base your actions, it's still wrong. You forgot the religious tenets of everything. And my group will be there to thwart any move you'll make, that will endanger the 1.6 billion of believers, or debase the good reputation of Islam. Aaron did not reply. Instead, he ran to the inner part of the bunker, as bullets started to hit the areas where Jibrail was standing. He aimed his weapon to where his attacker probably is, and discharged a full magazine. But by the time the sound subsided, he decided not to pursue the Khalifa. He has nowhere to go. Aaron might be hiding in the deepest recesses of the bunker, guarded by his surviving followers. Let the regular troops do their job, of dislodging an enemy of Islam. The officers from 527th Space Aggressor Squadron tried to figure out how to deactivate the nuclear weapons at Hoover Dam. The ACDS continued the W-80 GPS-activated countdown from the Minsat. Initially, the team was glad to get their hands on the laptop of Ayman Kalimov. But to their dismay later on, they cannot make out of the programs because everything was in Arabic. "What's the system the terrorists adopted?" the team leader asked the blondie. "Based on a source code I saw for this program. It can be activated in a remote device, like a mobile phone, to direct a controlled reception pattern antenna, with adaptive spatial filtering technique that mitigates signal interferences." She demonstrated the application of the theory, in her own smartphone. Then, hooking up with the GPS of Minsat, the system has a technology that uses power minimization to reduce the effect of jamming, so that the GPS receiver can continue to operate correctly. "I got it!" the skinny officer shouted. The null-forming system preserved the antenna's view of Minsat's GPS. The system can ignore any interference, leading to a constant access of the satellite signals, required to compute precise positioning. In this mode, Minsat's signal could pass through to its receiver on land, despite an active orbital jamming. The team leader concluded, this is how they were able to explode the bioweapon at the AMS facility, despite the presence of active jamming by the US military. Okay guys, enough gossiping for now. It's time to try what you just said. Colonel Clark kept on glancing at the countdown. The cyber warriors went into their tasks. Anyone who saw them working will think that they are in the heat of an online role-playing game. The countdown dropped to 5 minutes. The 527th SAS team's action became intense, as the time approaches 0. They know that the nuclear bombs in Hoover Dam are now literally ticking rapidly towards doomsday. The North American Aerospace Defense Command informed General Alexander Leahy that satellite images indicated a movement of military assets and heightened alert in major bases, in countries of interest that harbor known weapons of mass destruction. General, the states of Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea mobilized their nuclear arsenals. The NORAD commander voiced out a major concern. That's expected, when we raised our forces to DEFCON 3. The chairman of JCS half-heartedly swallowed his own explanation. Right after Aaron al-Hassani made his ultimatum to the United Nations, an affirmation of the intelligence community, of the existence of the weapons of mass destruction at Lake Mead area, the president authorized the U.S. military to increase in force readiness above that required for normal readiness. Major nuclear powers at odds with the United States would always be on alert for any preemptive strike against their homeland, whenever there are nuclear arms crises in the US, so that as a precautionary measure, these countries will raise their own readiness status, in terms of military strike capability. Nevertheless, inform the White House of this new situation. General Leahy directed his staff of the task. I also need to have that red phone by my side, the highest Pentagon official insisted, to keep open a direct communication to his counterparts in other countries, to avoid any accidental order that may launch Armageddon. The remote timer of the WAD registered 00:11. It is 11 seconds before the nuclear bomb goes off. At Hoover Dam, the weapons may be shaking a little, as its warhead is starting to take electrical pulses to the different components of the bomb. 00:09. The nuclear scientists at Los Alamos Laboratory predicted that the WAD at the upstream face will have a 150 kiloton surface explosion that will blow out a large chunk of the 45 feet thick upper segments of the dam. 00:07. Despite the 650 feet thick base of high strength, 7,200 psi concrete reinforced with 45 million pounds of steel, the massive explosion from the other side, plus a similar explosive force of another WAD at the base of the downstream slope, will reinforce a fracture at the lower dam structure. 00:05. The 6.6 million tons total weight of the dam is not enough to counter a catastrophic structural failure from rapid water erosion through the fractured physical structure. Lieutenant Onel de Guzman, a namesake of the creator of Lovebug, the world's first major computer virus outbreak, has to prove his worth as the US Space Force's preeminent programmer. We've cracked Minsat's colonel, the lanky team leader of the 527th Space Aggressor Squadron, announced the break. He was able to access the core of the Khalifa's Minsat operating system, with complete control over everything, in the obsolete satellite's application software. He was surprised to realize that Minsat still utilized one of the oldest and basic programming languages, C++. Execute exit function to deactivate the WAD detonator. Lieutenant de Guzman instructed his assistants to initiate a code to abort the digital trigger mechanisms for the two WAD weapons. 00:03. 3 seconds to detonation. The global media was able to hook up to the bomb's countdown. As the world watches, the US government placed its hope to the magnificent 4 USSF cyber warriors. Everybody hold its breath. Press the enter key. Lieutenant de Guzman shouted the final command to be heard. 00:02. The timer stopped at 00:01. The USSF cyber warriors shouted gleefully like children, upon hearing that Santa Claus will have additional gifts to those who were nice to their pets. At the White House, the President congratulated General Alexander Leahy and the USSF Commanding General. "We have a very terrific military." The President praised the USSF cyber warriors, in his usual jolly style. He also narrated how the SEALs, the Rangers, and the newly baptized Astrians were able to subjugate the Caliphate army in Vero Beach, in Hoover Dam and in Los Angeles. However, at the Pentagon, the mood is not yet celebratory. We still have one unaccounted location of the installed bioweapon. General Leahy reminded the other top brass. "Sir, here's a call from the 527th SAS team." A junior officer handed the phone to the JCS chairman. "General, this is Lieutenant Colonel Siegfried Clark, Ground Commander at Zulfikar Resort. My technicians wanted to relay a report that there is still one GPS coordinate that is connected to a device, somewhere within the United Nations headquarters. God damn it. That's the first one that was shown by that madman yesterday. Sir, the cyber warriors advised that, if possible, let the occupants of the UN headquarters complex evacuate the entire area. The bioweapon was probably installed in an air conditioning system. A ricin is very deadly, when inhaled by air. Can they not deactivate the bomb, Colonel? Sir, it appears that this one has been programmed separately. Its trigger is not just by GPS, but probably it will be activated by a line of sight signal, or through the typical smartphone signal. Work on it, Colonel Clark. A CIA computer systems analyst got the permission of the UN Secretariat to look inside the refrigeration system. He noted the weapon's configuration and tried some computer modeling. Finally, he was able to deduce that the bomb's trigger mechanism is based on a unique code that was embossed on the blasting cap of the RCX device. He copied the code and passed it to Hot Ice. Back in Zulfikar Resort, a cyber warrior was able to reroute the MINSAT signal for activating the trigger mechanism of the bioweapon at the UN headquarters in New York. Colonel, a civilian chopper popped out from the ground and is getting airborne. The tactical radio of Colonel Clark suddenly squawked. Is there a way to prevent that bird from escaping? Siegfried wanted to find some options. Negative, sir. It's beyond our reach now. The man named Jibrail received a text message from an unknown number. You thought you have won? Extend my regards to the Big Apple. The AI executive chopper went higher. Everybody outside the resort could now discern the Sikorsky Executive S-92, where the Khalifa rode. The media in particular put to flight their chopper, for a live coverage of Aaron Al-Hassani, from his resort to nowhere. Everything was lost, but we can start somewhere, Louise. Aaron addressed his pilot. The White Widow took a chartered flight yesterday from Florida to Los Angeles. She witnessed how the Caliphate army was destroyed. While his commanders started to question his decisions, she remained faithful. She even volunteered for her role in piloting the getaway chopper. Maybe we can start somewhere in Colombia. She smiled while gaining altitude. That's right. Meanwhile, I want to leave a legacy with these American ingratiates. Confidently thinking that he has the world in his grip with the RCX bomb in the basement of the UN headquarters, the Khalifa pressed the button to activate the trigger of the bioweapon explosive device. An IED was secretly planted near the engine assembly by Hot Ice. Using the code that the CIA analyst got from the blasting cap of the bomb at the UN building, she was able to reroute the GPS-activated trigger to the IED detonator in the Sikorsky helicopter. The bomb exploded, and its debris were sucked by the chopper's engine, which caused an immediate explosion and disintegration of the executive air transport. The Sheikh of the slaughterers Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, otherwise known as Aaron al-Hassani, finally met a fiery and unquestionable end. Through satellite and live coverage, the spectacular airborne explosion was witnessed by the international media, representatives of UN member governments, viewing public all over the world, and Al-Qaeda and Islamic State fighters and supporters. With the demise of the Sheikh of the slaughterers, the Al-Hassani Industries Board of Directors convened for an emergency meeting to decide on the fate of the company. With her extensive experience of assisting the top management in supervising the personnel of this company, I would like to recommend electing Ms. Catherine Mendiola as the new President and Chief Executive Officer of Al-Hassani Industries and its subsidiary companies. A second majority shareholder nominated the HRM officer to take the top leadership position. Although I have a reservation, but the fact that Ms. Mendiola has a legal affinity with Aaron Al-Hassani, I also endorse her ownership of the stocks which rightfully belongs to the late founder of Al-Hassani Industries. Another senior shareholder agreed. Earlier, she gave the directors a copy of her marriage certificate with Aaron last April 22, 2018, at the exclusive St. Regis Bora Bora Resort in Tahiti. Consequently, the board has the legal basis of its action, and unanimously elected the HRMO as AI President CEO. An estimated $20 billion fortune was left in her charge, plus the regular owner's equity derived from the Al-Hassani Industries' various subsidiary businesses. With all those years of sacrifices and living in danger, you've earned it, Catherine Mendiola, the Harvard MBA graduate, and beauty queen turned CIA agent code name, Hot Ice, congratulated herself. Having the help of scientists from the Los Alamos National Laboratory, the W-80 nuclear weapons were defused, and returned to the United States Air Force. The incident transpired because of negligence by top military officers, in the illegal transfer and subsequent loss of the W-80 warheads. Colonel Siegfried Clark, after getting a field promotion, reported to the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the U.S. Air Force nuclear weapons incident, Broken Arrow. The case stemmed from an incident on August 29, 2007, when 6 AGM-129 ACM cruise missiles, each loaded with a W-80-1 variable-yield nuclear warhead, were mistakenly loaded onto a U.S. Air Force B-52H heavy bomber at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, and transported to Barksdale Air Force Base in Lewis, Iowa. Such inexcusable lapses were exploited by junior officers to profit from the sale of W-80 warheads to the illegals program network. The serial number and other details of the bomb that Professor Sean Gabriel Fitzgerald had noted at the Hoover Dam powerhouse was a big help for Director Christian Finch and the FBI to identify the multinational characters in the weapons black market transactions. Meanwhile, the RCX bioweapons installed in water treatment facilities around Lake Mead, and the one at the UN headquarters air conditioning system, were successfully disengaged, with the deactivation of Minsat's GPS trigger mechanism by the USSF cyber warriors. The CDC assisted the maintenance personnel of Alfred Merritt Smith Water Treatment Facility to drain its tank and decontaminate from ricin poison. A large portion of Nevada served by this facility has to endure for over a week of water rationing, much to the frustration of high-class establishments in Las Vegas. The attaché cases at the Khalifa's headquarters contained several diamonds worth billions of dollars. Another long box in a cabinet enclosed the Zulfikar sword. "These are fortunes," Gwen exclaimed, as the treasure was turned over to the U.S. Treasury Department for safekeeping, while the courts determined the legitimacy of its acquisition. It was decided that the Zulfikar resort and other real properties of Aaron al-Hassani will be given to the legitimate heir and claimant, Miss Catherine Mendiola. However, those funds in secret accounts that the Interpol had detected were deemed to be coming from illegal source, such as transactions involving the Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. It will be subjected to evaluation also, to ascertain the links of this paper trail to other members of the terrorist organizations. The first resolution of the new AI Board of Directors designated Dr. Guinevere Del Pilar to dismantle the rogue Al-Qaeda ISIS laboratory that Amira Siddiqui used to produce bioweapons at Salt Wells Villa in Fallon City. The regular members of the board were so shocked, upon knowing that the company was involved in jihadist activities. They never expected also, that the AI top executive was the well-known Sheikh of Slaughterers, from the Middle East. I hope that you will continue your work at the AI Med Laboratory. President CEO Catherine Mendiola made a strong appeal to Gwen. Hot Ice is the ultimate lady boss. Being a former HRMO, everybody was known to her, and it was easy to gain their trust in the transition to a new management. Please supervise the manufacture and distribution of the Sinovac vaccine to the third world countries, especially in Muslim areas. Aaron may be the beast that was portrayed by his compatriots, but he had that feeling of helping the poor in Islamic countries, through this vaccine. Catherine knows that the Khalifa was sincere in establishing the caliphate at the Sinai Peninsula. Had it not for the complicated relationship he had with the Pakistani scientist, the various events which unfolded in the past few days could not have materialized, without the assurance from Amira Siddiqui, with the production of the weapons of mass destruction. I contracted the One Muslim organization to implement this COVID-19 vaccination campaign, free of charge. I knew very well that you would want to work with its president, the scholarly Mullah Jibril ibn Ali. The way hot I said it, evokes a certain meaning to the Filipino geneticist, Dr. Guinevere del Pilar.
Thank you for watching. Write in the comments section for your request as to what book, usually from Project Gutenberg, you want us to feature in U-Book channel.
Click like to boost the rating of U-Book channel, make a comment for us for the improvement of our services, and share this video to your friends, with the copyright intact. Please click subscribe, and hit the bell button to be notified of new uploads from U-Book channel.